Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Redford, and this is the follow-up. Coming up on tonight's show, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, or DEI. Most every business, organization, and school is doing something to enhance their workforce and their culture overall through DEI, but are they moving the dial? Tonight, we will focus on a growing partnership in mid-Michigan where nonprofits are teaming up with the Bay Area Community Foundation to make a big impact through DEI. We have 3 community leaders in-house to tell their stories and help you learn how to get involved. But first, we would like to hear from you to help drive the conversation here on the show. You can do that in a variety of ways via social media on Facebook. You can email us. You can dial into our follow-up hotline to voice your opinion or suggest future show topics. And if you'd like to watch any of our past shows this season, just log on to deltapublicmedia.org. Now for tonight's show, we have 3 important guests in the studio. I'll start over here. Diane Mahoney, President and CEO of the Bay Area Community Foundation. You've been here before. We're glad to have you back.
Happy to be here.
To my left, Moira Branigan, the Executive Director of the YWCA of Great Lakes Bay Region, and Erin Patrice. She is the founder and CEO of the Breaking Bread Village. Nice to have you all. It's going to be a great discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having
Pretty
us.
excited to have you.
Thanks.
So Diane, I will start with you because it's been a year since I had you on the show. It was after the Bay Area Community Foundation did this extensive diversity, equity, inclusion report. So tell us a little about this journey. What have you learned? Do you think you're moving the dial?
So I hope we're moving the dial. We're certainly trying to, and probably what's been the most exciting part of this next year since we last met was the partnerships we formed with the two nonprofits that are here with us, as well as others in our community. We made a commitment when we released that study that it was not going to be something that just stayed on a shelf, that we were going to actually engage in work. And so we've partnered up with the YWCA as well as the Breaking Bread Village. And I'm so excited that they're here to share the work that they've been doing in our community.
Which we'll talk to them in a moment. I know we have a little bit of a definition of DEI for the viewers that have forgot what that's all about. So while we talk, we can kind of throw it up there. And when it comes to your report on the DEI, it involves all kinds of issues and topics: education, housing, policing, and criminal justice, socioeconomics. So do you think you're getting some positive traction in one area, maybe a little bit more attention in another area?
Yep, so I do think we're getting positive traction in the conversation in Bay County. So one of the things we identified in that study was that we were not hearing from the community. We were a community that kept saying we don't have a problem because we're very homogeneous. And the reality is we are becoming more diverse. And through that study, we did hear a lot from people of all skin colors, but what we didn't hear from were people who are the working families. They're called ALICE in many situations.
Sure.
Asset limited, income constrained employee.
Very good. That's it. Yeah.
So that was a tough one. But we weren't hearing their stories. So that allowed us to reach out to Breaking Bread Village to start some community conversations. And so we have a year-long series of conversations going on through Breaking Bread, but also our nonprofit partners. We were very fortunate that we were able to partner with the YWCA as a staff, and we went through an intercultural development inventory. And as staff members, we've planned out work. Now 2 years we've been doing it. And we had such a good experience, we wanted to offer that to our nonprofit partners. So we're providing the funding for the YWCA to do that. And this work has not been without challenges, right? So we are in a time in our world where it seems more and more it's us versus them. And what we are trying to do through this work is rediscover we. And we will all benefit if we are united. It's a matter of respect and care for one another.
Sure. Yeah. Well said. So let's come over to this side, and more, I'll go with you and Patrice maybe next, or you guys can kind of work together on this. Tell us about this journey, this process, how you got involved, and how it's going for you.
Yeah, well, I joined the YWCA in 2019, and we didn't have fully fleshed out diversity inclusion programming. Our mission is to eliminate racism and empower women, so we felt it was really important to kind of build something, provide something to the community, because I was getting questions like, do you guys have a trainer? Do you know of anybody locally who does this? And there are a couple people who are doing this, but the DEI component that we focus on is through the intercultural development inventory, which is an assessment and just measures how much experience you have working with or interacting with somebody who doesn't have the same background as you. And so it was just a way to kind of measure where you're at and where you want to be. And we look at all measures of diversity in this, obviously skin color and all of the things that you can be, age, race, etc. And we really try to give people something they can start learning more and kind of challenge themselves a little bit. And yeah, and that's why I think that Erin's work is so cool too, because talking is part of it. We got to talk. We got to communicate. So yeah.
Great handoff to
Thank
Erin.
you. Moira,
Very good. So the Breaking Bread Village,
Yes.
2020, you founded this. So
2020,
talk to us
yes.
about that and what is it you're trying to accomplish? What was the impetus?
What we are accomplishing,
Right,
right?
absolutely,
So what's interesting is I want to kind of piggyback off of what Diane was saying when she said, you know, hearing the community. And I think what makes our work unique is that, you know, you hear inclusion all the time, but a lot of times it only means the people that align with you, right? The people that are saying and echoing what you say, or kind of believe in what you believe. And in our work, we believe in hearing from the whole community, and that's everybody, even the people that we may not agree with, because how do you serve a community that you don't listen to? How do you serve a community that you're not opening up a space to be able to hear from them so that you can serve them in a certain way? So I'm glad you touched on that, because that is important. That's the important piece of DEI work, in my opinion. So yeah, we started in 2020, and that was a time where it was a lot of stuff going on. And what was interesting is that it didn't matter what side of the fence you sat on in 2020. Everybody went through something, right? We had a pandemic. We had George Floyd, social justice stuff going on, right? We had a presidential election, and it was an election unlike any other that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. And we had a pandemic, right? So we had all these things at the same time, and I think people were imploding. And for me, it was like, you know, we have to create a space where we can hear people.
So walk me through what the training looks like. You've also been doing some live shows, so can you just kind of put me in that room when you're doing some of this training? Who's in the room? What's going on?
Sure. Well, I'll talk a little bit about Interact. That's the name of our program.
Okay.
And using the IDI assessment, people take an online assessment before they meet with me, and it's usually clubs, coworkers, you know, it's just a group of folks. I've done it one-on-one with folks too. And they take the assessment, and then we meet as a group and we talk about the group score. Everything's really kept anonymous, because I know sometimes when we talk about this stuff, even talking about it, people get really nervous. And that's been the biggest challenge to overcome, is that people go into it with their guard up and they're like, I don't want to answer these questions. I don't know what they're trying to trick me, et cetera, et cetera. So once we get the results and we talk as a group, we do a couple, you know, interactions, you know, in a group conversation, and then we talk about this continuum, where from least amount of experience with intercultural competency to the most. And we place people on this, you know, on this continuum. Most people are in the middle. Most people have a little experience, not a lot, and they just need to be challenged to, like, how can I push myself a little bit more? Everybody thinks they're a good driver, but, you know, when it comes down to it, they might not be the best driver. This is the same type of thing. How much experience do you have? So, yeah.
And there's no subject or topic that's off limits.
No.
And you're taking on some pretty difficult, challenging things. I'll just start with race.
Yeah.
Boy, you throw that out there. And I was doing my homework, which I do once in a while. And I know you've gotten into, at least in some of your live shows, and I want to hear more about that. Yeah. Religion, ideology, morality, maybe even politics per se. So talk to me about that, how challenging and difficult, and you've got to get people to open up, but that's hard to do, right?
Yeah. So we take a different approach, right? I mean, nothing is anonymous, right? We want to lay it all out there, because I think that people have to learn how to navigate in this world with other people, right? we are not going to always be in spaces where everybody agrees with us. So how do we do it? How do we all work together at the foundation for a common goal, even though we have different ideas and you know, backgrounds, experiences. So my experience is different than you all, so we have to be able to talk about that. So yes, we talk about bias and judgment, and we talk about, I mean, you talked about race, and even DEI itself is very weaponized right now. Of course, I believe in diversity, I believe in equity and inclusion, but I don't go around saying, you know, I'm a DEI expert. I don't do any of that. I show up as a human, right? And I say, listen, we are all humans together. How are we gonna do this? And you talked about the we part. It's like, you know, we have to remember that we are all in this together, no matter what. We are all here together. But first, I think a lot of the work that we do, it focuses on that me too, right? You have to do the change. That's why it's called Including You series, because if you want change, it includes you. You have to be a part of it.
We're in a political season, a very volatile political season of this cancer culture, and we're judging each other, and we don't let that other person speak. So how are you getting past that? Or do you get to that wall that say, okay, I'm backing off now? I'm just curious. Yeah.
I'm not a backer offer person, so I don't know how to say that, you know, but I ask questions, right? I believe that curiosity is important, and I think that people want to be heard. People want to be heard. So if you create a space for them to be able to be heard, you'd be surprised. And it's so intimidating at first for some people. They're like, I'm so nervous, I'm not an expert. I'm like, I don't want you to be an expert, just show up as yourself, just be you. And you have people telling, I mean, Diane has witnessed it, Moira has witnessed it. I mean, people start sharing stuff that they say, I never shared this before in front of anybody else. Because I think that the atmosphere is created for people to really feel like, oh, like it's okay, because there's no judgment. We don't all go, what? You know, it's not this like gasp that happens. Everybody is truly listening. And I think that's why we're able to do the work we do.
So Diane, now that you're working with these two groups, I mean, you're kind of leading the training. You're a nonprofit. Is the goal now to expand to other nonprofits? How does that work? Is there a cost to getting involved? Do you become somewhat of an advocate, a cheerleader to others in the community that, hey, you got to get involved in this? And hey, do you have the budget to do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're always raising money, Mike, as you know.
Yeah.
But
I work a little bit in that world, yes. Yeah.
No, the reality is the Breaking Bread series of conversations, that is free to the public. So we do ask people to register because we've been filling up the room. Our goal was to have 30 to 35 people come for each one of these conversations, and we've been closing registration out at 100. So that tells me that our community is ready for these conversations. And then the work with Moira, we are underwriting the cost of nonprofit partners participating. One of the things that I kind of wanted to piggyback on what the two of you were talking about is when we went into this work, some of the pushback that I personally received is people would say, what are you trying to do? Like, what are you wanting us to start thinking and believing? And I'm like, whoa, I have no agenda. So the Interact program is not trying to get us all to think the same way. It's trying to get us to see how we're viewing the world. And the same thing with the conversations that Erin's having. I participated in one as a community member, and I can remember someone said something and it got me very fired up, right? And I sat there and I'm like, I want to say something. I'm like, I'm not going to say something. And finally I spoke up and my heart was racing. But it was safe. It was a very safe environment to say, I care about my white son as much as I care about you. And I want both of us taken care of.
Yes.
That is so perceptive, because I've been involved in a couple of these over the years as well. And sometimes folks in that circle, this is judgment free, just immediately they want to set some ground rules saying, well, yeah, I'm involved in this, I'll talk about this topic, but I'm not going here, I'm not going here, and I'm not going here. So it was all automatically kind of coming out of the gate. So that's why I ask about how do you get past that kind of, or are people already going, hey, I'm open, I'm honest, let's have at it.
No, that's not the case at all. Some people are ready to talk, right? And some people do feel like, you know, do you have an agenda? Is this an ambush? Are you, because that happens, right? Especially in some of those spaces. And I think what happens, I'll just say from my perspective, I think that why we've been able to have such success is because we do not go into it with any kind of expectations. A lot of stuff when people are facilitating something, there's an expectation of change, of understanding, of thought, right? They expect for people to leave being these better humans. I don't have any expectation of that. All I expect is for us to be respectful. We have to respect each other. We have to actively listen the best we can. And when you take that expectation off the table, there's really no barrier. People feel like, oh, okay, I can just be myself. Yeah, we don't have to walk away holding hands and going for coffee, even though that happens after people learn about each other and they're like, oh my goodness, this was cool. But I think that we take that away. Just be yourself, be honest, and listen and respect each other. That's it.
And one thing I always try to close our presentations with is we want to make sure that you're working to understand somebody else. It does not mean you have to agree with them.
Yes.
And that is so hard for people to do. And if I just say that every time, and it's like my big, we got to try to understand each other. And we live next to each other, we work next to each other, and we silo ourselves in so many ways. And everybody deserves mutual respect, and we all deserve understanding, no matter what age, sex, race, etc. So
We need to be better listeners. We can agree to disagree, but let's hear each other out in a respectful way, right? I mean, ideally, that's what we're looking for. So some of this work, since you started in 2020, was a lot of it sort of based in Midland. Now you're sort of branching out to Bay County and some others.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that journey as you're transitioning into maybe a different community. When I think about Midland, and maybe this is a general statement, correct me if I'm wrong, so socioeconomics in Midland County may be different than Bay County, or is it all sort of one size fits all? You can plug and play what you're doing anywhere.
I think there are a little bit of all of that, right? In Midland, Bay County, I mean, in Saginaw, Flint, I mean, we have people that have, pretty well off, right? And then we have some people who are struggling. And I feel like in some communities, the people who are struggling in different ways are not being heard. And so just to let you know, for about a year, we just did it online. I brought people in online and we would talk in the little squares because we couldn't go anywhere, so we did it that way. And when we came back to do it after that year, it was suggested, like, you should do a live show. And I was like, oh, okay, because I'm just like, let's go, let's do it. And it was supposed to be just one, no big deal, we'll do it and go back to online. And people loved it, people enjoyed it, they liked the coming together. And I don't know if it was because of the pandemic, after that post-pandemic feeling of wanting to connect, but it went well, so that's how it continued. And then Diane, I actually met her
in Midland.
They were doing their foundation retreat, and the Midland Area Community Foundation asked me to come do kind of like a simulation of one of our shows. So we did a small little example to give you a little taste of it. And Diane came up to me afterwards and was like, let's talk. And I mean, do you want to talk about that a little bit, about why because it happened really quick too.
It was very powerful when you just sat in a room and you heard people saying things that you're saying in your kitchen, but you're not saying other places. And until we start having those very honest conversations, we're not going to make progress. And it was done in a very non-threatening, safe way. And so we knew we needed to hear from our community. So it just seemed like the perfect fit.
Yeah.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go.
But
You're good.
I just want to mention something. What was so beautiful about that was that we had the CEOs there, right? We had the people that were running the show, and then they had, people that were working alongside with you. But I had a couple that came up to me after and said, it was so nice to hear our president, our CEO talk, right? They got to know each other a little bit more in that space. And I think that's what we need. We have to show that we all can be vulnerable a little bit. We all have things going on. We all have questions. We're all trying to navigate this life. And I think that's what made it so powerful, that if we were in a space where people who never hear, Diane say, well, I have questions about this, they felt more empowered. And I think that helps productivity in the workplace and all kind of things in regards to that. Yeah.
Are you taking anything out of anybody else's playbook? I mean, in the foundation world, do you know if your peers, colleagues at other foundations are trying to pick this up? Anyone else in the other YWCAs around the country, is this become a hot button issue? Are they addressing it in similar ways?
I actually didn't steal, but the IDI is an assessment we pay for is kind of the backbone of this. A lot of other YWCAs across the country use it, so that's why I kind of went to that as a great, cultural competency basics. So I mean, I'm sure other community foundations are talking about this.
We copied the idea from Midland, and I was actually just at a statewide retreat, and I was talking about the work that Breaking Bread Village is doing. So, you know, hopefully we can spark these conversations throughout the state. Heck, let's go to the country.
I mean, why not, right?
Take it on the road.
Tell me what you're doing. You mentioned to me just before the show about something you're doing with school districts now.
Yep, so we actually have a funding partnership with Consumers Energy Foundation, and we are working with 2 local school districts who, one of the data points that came out of that report was that close to 50% of the youth in our community do not feel like they belong at school.
Wow.
So that was a very troubling statistic. And so we had 2 superintendents. You know, this work can be very volatile for local communities, especially within the schools, right? Parents are very protective of their children, as I am. So we had these 2 districts that knew they wanted to do work, Bangor Township and Essexville Hampton, but they wanted a partner to go into that work with them. So we had conversations with them, they had conversations together, and now both of those districts have established cohorts of administration down to you know, custodians or lunch aides, and they are going through an 18-month Beyond Equity journey for their districts. And our youth group, we have a youth advisory council that is now providing the youth voice to that work.
Right.
So they're coming up with plans, and then they talk to our youth and they're like, yeah, that's not going to work. We don't want to do that.
Right.
So it's been exciting. We're excited about that work.
Well, kids need to talk, and we all know about the mental health crisis that we're in affecting our youth, and I can see this as opening some doors. It could be very powerful. So as you guys see sort of the DEI movement around the country, I mean, the Breaking Bread Village, you said 2020, right? That's when I think a lot of organizations, companies, the George Floyd, everybody kind of came out hot. And we were all, I mean, my own company, we were doing DEI, which is fine. I thought it was fruitful, and but then if you read some of the statistics, some have just sort of fallen off. They haven't gotten the traction. It's become sort of maybe less of a priority. Do you feel like around the country it's lost some steam, and if so, how do we invigorate it? And is this a way that we can get it back? Is this sort of a solution? So
I have seen in working, because I'm primarily working with coworkers and workplaces and businesses and nonprofits, people are, you know, the boss or the manager will come in and be like, I really want to do this, we should be doing this. And there could be some pushback, there could be some struggle, some uncomfortable feelings or sentiments, and then folks will just kind of back off and be like, hey, I don't know. And I think 2021 was a weird year. I got a lot of pushback that year when I was doing the assessments and doing the debriefs. It was very challenging. And I know this kind of this wave of like how open people are to thinking about this. I think it's still there. I think people are really still pushing on it. I think if people backed off and maybe lost their nerve, there's still, you know, understand it, I get it, but there's still room to, you know, keep this going. And there's a lot of different voices to listen to. There's not just one answer to this whole question. So, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I've been doing a lot of research about this, right? I get all these articles, and I'm seeing where, you know, I mean, we have whole states that have cut off DEI, right? It's not just falling off. They've said, we're not doing
that's
it,
kind
right?
of where I was going on that.
Well,
right,
I'll say,
right.
I'll be the one to say it, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then we have also where people are firing people, right? That they've hired, whole departments, they're dismantling. And I have different thoughts about why. And I think that some of it is our approach with it, right? If I go into a room, so I'll give an example. I went to Hemlock Semiconductor and talked, and most of the room was white males. I mean, that was most of the room, right? It was funny because I walked in and I said, who has a pickup truck? Because the whole parking lot was literally pickup trucks, right? Sure. And they all laughed, and you know, and it was a joke. But I said, you know, if I went into that room and said, you all are all this, that, and the other, and you need to be like this, this, and this, right, I'm losing them, right?
Right. So
I think sometimes our approach is why it's kind of fizzling out, right? People are not interested. If they feel like they are, I'll say it, you know, if they feel like they are being kind of pointed out and saying that they are wrong because they happen to be a white male in today's world, I mean, would you want to listen to someone that told you you were a terrible person because you happen to be white. You know, so we actually talked about this
Right.
yesterday at Central Michigan University. It was awesome.
Right.
It was amazing.
Right.
We talked about DEI and we asked the question, is it helpful or is it harmful? How are we approaching this?
Sure.
How are we trying to connect with people, right?
Right.
So yeah.
How do you define success? We've got a couple of minutes here, so I want to hit that quickly. How do you define success for what you're doing? And then secondly, for viewers that are watching, how can they get involved? So who wants to start with defining success a little bit in the couple minutes that we have?
Well, I will say, I'll make a stab at it. For success for me, whenever I do presentations or having these conversations, if somebody comes after me afterwards or does in the final survey to wrap up the process, if they say that they learned something or they went into it with their guard up and they left like kind of understanding something a little bit more, it's just a one-by-one kind of relationship building. It's got to be changed on a personal level.
Right.
That's for my program and for us, it's just incremental. It's making sure people are more comfortable having these conversations.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Success to me, so I'm not a numbers person. I have to gather the numbers because people like to know what the numbers are,
Sure.
right? But I'm not a numbers person, right? I look at success as the stories we get afterwards. We literally have people, because I'm very strategic of how people sit at the table, right, when they come to these things. And when you have people who are different on every aspect of things that come together and then they say, you know what, after this show, I want to go meet with this person. When they invite another guest to go have coffee to talk more, that's success to me. We had a lady that told me that she reached out to her brother after not talking to him for 2 years because of who he
Right.
voted for president. That is success to me. So that's how I measure it, is by the stories that we get afterwards. Stories like Diane just told. That's how we measure it. So
Right. We have all your websites. We're going to put that up so our viewers can see it. So if they want more information, they can go to those websites. They're up there now. So what would you say some of the next steps are? I know you've got some live shows. You've got some other stuff going on. They can sign up they can register. So talk to me about that in the
Yes.
30 seconds we have. So,
okay,
yeah.
May 14th, we have, we're going to be talking about empathy and tolerance. Are you tolerating each other? Are you being empathetic? Are you doing a little bit of both? Why do we tolerate people? Is it enough to only tolerate people? And they can go to tbbv.org and register underneath the live show, or they can come, right? But we would love for them to register because we do have a limited capacity, right? So
Love it. And we'll leave it at that. And that is our show for tonight. But be sure to join us again next Tuesday night for the follow-up. 4 years since the devastating dam breach in Midland County, the village of Sanford is making a comeback. Hear how they did it next week on the follow-up. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great night. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And make sure to click that bell icon to stay notified when we upload new content. Videos like this are only possible because of viewers like you. To help support this channel, click on the link in the description below. We'll see you next time.